1v1 plus era plus sweet Pet+Wearing Books, a mysterious energy proton, an unexpected accident, led her to wear a novel from an era, and she is also a supporting actress with the same name and surname destined to have a tragic ending. Shen Shujia is not a person who accepts fate, so she kicks scumbags, fights back against villains, and learns to earn money and work proficiently. So, accidentally, he became a group pet. The villager exclaimed, "Such a good wife must be married back home." Just as the villagers were frantically encouraging their own son to pursue Shen Shujia, a clingy fairy had silently married her away. Keywords of the novel. Girl wearing books. She becomes a group favorite in the era novel without pop-ups. Girl wearing books. She becomes a group favorite in the era novel. Download the complete set of TXT. Girl wearing books. She becomes a group favorite in the era novel and reads the latest chapters. Chapter 1. Energy Protons. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 1 Energy Protons, Shujia. This author is simply lacking in moral values. On the other end of the phone came the angry voice of my good friend Xiaolan. Shen Shujia flipped through the company's product introduction materials and couldn't help but raise her lips slightly. It seems that if Xiaolan could be so angry, she must have been wronged for another character in the novel. They are all paper people, reading novels is just for fun, passing the boring time. If there's anything to be angry about, don't be angry, Momoda. As soon as Shen Shujia finished speaking, Xiaolan on the other end of her phone exploded and said, "I don't want to either. Who made the canon fodder female supporting character in the novel have the same name and surname as you? And then I wanted to know how the plot about Shen Shujia in the novel developed. Who knew that seeing it in the end, I was so angry." Shujia, let me tell you, the author of the article Rebirth of 7-0 and Seduction of Educated Youth, is definitely not upright. Shen Shujia didn't do anything wrong in it because the female lead is the author's own daughter. After being reborn, can she do whatever she wants and grab someone else's object at will? I'm so angry, I really wish I could run into a novel and beat her up. Next, Xiaolan began to talk incessantly about the general content written in the novel. After Xiaolan finished speaking, it was already 3 hours later. Looking at the starry night outside the window, her stomach was already growling and urging her to search for food. Shen Shujia got up from the chair, and the information on the desktop suddenly disappeared out of thin air. She walked to the entrance door with her usual expression on her face, and casually picked up a branded bag from the shelf to go out. There is a Chinese restaurant nearby, and she plans to have a good dinner before returning to continue reading materials. To go to a Chinese restaurant, you need to pass through a small night market square, which is very lively every night. At the same time, there are people in all kinds of bizarre costumes, even many cosplay anime characters. Therefore, many self-media street photos are searching for targets there. Shen Shujia is not bad looking, with a small face and delicate features. She is 168 centimeters tall and is also a very eye-catching beauty walking on the road. But she doesn't really like being scolded by those street photographers, so she always walks by the corners. Even so, someone still stood in front of her. Looking up, there was a boy wearing a loose-fitting silver waist, somewhat like a cos interstellar male warrior. At this moment, he was looking at himself with eager eyes. Shen Shujia frowned slightly. Gu Yen looked at the girl in front of him, and a sense from his body told him that his energy proton was on this girl. "Excuse me, please." Shen Shujia reminded out loud. "Can you return my energy proton to me?" Gu Yen said anxiously. The energy to maintain his figure is about to run out, and he must retrieve his energy proton as soon as possible. Otherwise, we will have to save enough energy for projection next time, and I don't know when it will be. Shen Shujia was shocked in her heart. Although she didn't know what the energy proton he was talking about was, she could feel that what he was talking about was a small space she had obtained 10 days ago. That day, she was tasting wine on her own balcony when suddenly an orange light shot down from the sky and instantly penetrated her body. She was frightened and immediately went to the hospital for a physical examination, only to find that there was nothing wrong before she calmed down. 2 days later, she accidentally discovered that she inexplicably had a small space of less than 1 cubic meter. She is not a greedy person. Since the thing belongs to someone else and the owner has already been found, it is understandable for it to be returned to its original owner. She just doesn't know how to take it out. The thing you said may be inside my body, and I don't know how to take it out. Shen Shujia reluctantly told the truth, and she didn't doubt whether this person was the owner of this space. Because only the owner of this space, besides oneself, will know about this matter. What? Gu Yan was so shocked by her words that his eyes widened. How could energy protons possibly merge with her? It's impossible. Gu Yan was so anxious that he almost cried. He lost the energy proton, and his grandfather had to kill him. At this moment, his figure began to gradually become transparent. Shen Shujia, who was watching this scene on the side, was slightly surprised. She could even put a quail egg in her open mouth. Are you okay? Shen Shujia couldn't resist reaching out to touch him, and Gu Yan, who was as anxious as ants on a hot pot, instinctively grabbed her hand. At this moment, the surrounding sounds instantly disappeared, and all the character scenes in sight began to distort. Immediately after, a beam of light flickered brilliantly, piercing both of their eyes. When Shen Shujia opened her eyes again, everything around her changed. At the same time, countless images flashed through my mind frame by frame like a movie. After receiving the memory inheritance, she stood up and saw clearly that she was lying under a 3-meter deep slope. In addition to her, there is also a boy wearing dark blue tattered clothes. There are several patches on the clothes. I learned from my memory that I wore it on a girl with the same name and surname in 1975. Today, the original owner Nsong Ningyue came up the mountain to gather pig grass. The original owner saw a wild small apple larger than his thumb next to him. In this era, hunger was the current situation, and as long as he didn't die from hunger, it was considered lucky. Therefore, as soon as she saw a wild small apple, she couldn't wait to squat on the side and reach out to pick it. Picking a few small apples, she heard Song Ningyue behind her saying she wanted to come and help, and then felt like she was hit behind her and fell off. As for how the boy next to her fell, she had no idea at all. She only knew from her memory that this boy was also from the village, as if his name was Gu Yan. Just why does he look so similar to that person? Hiss, it hurts so much. Gu Yan rubbed his head and stood up. As soon as he saw Shen Shujia, he opened his eyes slightly and said urgently, "My energy is running out. You give me your hand quickly, and I'll try to draw out the energy protons." Upon hearing this, Shen Shujia rolled her eyes inwardly and instantly stood a few steps away from him. Oh, he's that person. It must be because of him that we both crossed paths. Think about how hard it was to study, work hard, and finally buy a house and a car in a first-tier city with full payment, achieving the beautiful life you want. As a result, everything was gone because of him. Thinking of this, Shen Shujia couldn't help but glare at him, her eyes full of murderous intent. Get lost. Gu Yan met her gaze and his heart trembled. He didn't understand that the girl in front of him had said 1 second that he wanted to return his energy proton, and the next second he wanted to make himself roll. He pursed the corners of his mouth and only then did he realize that everything around them had changed. He looked down and saw that he was still wearing tattered clothes. He suddenly looked at Shen Shujia and found that she was also dressed differently from before. Gu Yan suddenly felt a little flustered, and nervously reached out his hand in front of him, vigorously nodding. No matter how he points, his fingers never sense the presence of energy. Where exactly is this place? How come I can't feel the energy anymore? He was so anxious that he burst out crying. Newcomers and new books, please provide more support. If you find them attractive, remember to add a bookshelf and water them with nutrition tickets every day. Let's protect the growth of seedlings together. End of this chapter. Chapter 2. Clear Stupidity. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 2. Clear Stupidity. At first, Shen Shujia thought he could take her back, but the more she looked at it, the cooler her heart became. At this moment, looking at him was like looking at a big fool. Gu Yan clicked for a while but couldn't sense the energy, so he was forced to accept reality. He looked at Shen Shujia's cold eyes dejectedly and asked with a hint of grievance, "Hey, where are we now?" Shen Shujia glanced at him suspiciously and said, "Have you not received any memory?" Memory. Gu Yan shook his head and was about to say no when his head suddenly pricked. Then some unfounded images began to flash in my mind frame by frame. Did someone else invade me? Otherwise, how could he have been remembered by others? Gu Yan covered his head and murmured in disbelief. Just from those memories, it can be seen that the energy of this planet is barren, and surprisingly, someone can invade his brain. It's over, he's going to be gone. Just as Gu Yan was daydreaming, Shen Shujia's sarcastic voice penetrated her ears. It's not someone else invading you, it's you who crossed over and even implicated me in crossing over together. What is time travel? Crossing is the process of traveling from our previous time and space to this time and space, and this phenomenon is called crossing. Shen Shujia patiently explained a few words. She searched through her memory and found that Gu Yan was relatively quiet and reserved, not his somewhat awkward personality. In order to avoid this guy talking recklessly, it would drag me down and make me feel like Piao is possessed. And judging from his appearance, he should have also accepted the memory of the original resident Gu Yan. So there are some things that must be explained clearly to him. People in this time and space all have their own way of survival. If there is too much change before and after, it is easy to be mistaken for a monster, and the outcome is not something you can imagine. Really? Really? Upon hearing Shen Shujia's terrifying words, Gu Yan was somewhat frightened for a moment, and his clear and foolish eyes showed a hint of fear. This time and space is too terrifying, he needs to go home. At first glance, this boy looks like a young and inexperienced big boy. I really want to ravage him hard and let him know how dangerous this society is. Looking back, it's still important to focus on business now. She doesn't want to stay in this special and difficult period of survival. If I could go back, I naturally still want to go back to the 21st century. If you want to go back, you still have to rely on the boy in front of you. After a moment of thought, Shen Shujia's face softened and she asked, "How are you feeling now?" Gu Yan felt a bit aggrieved when he saw that she was no longer aggressive towards him. "I can't sense the energy fluctuations now, and my head is also a bit painful," he said. Shen Shujia's gaze fell on his head, and indeed she saw a large patch of blood. The wound in the center of the blood was still slowly bleeding outward. She frowned and said, "You probably hit your head. I don't have any medicine now, so I can't stop the bleeding for you." Upon hearing the words, medicine, Gu Yan's eyes lit up and he looked at Shen Shujia with a sparkling expression. "Medicine, there is medicine in my energy proton." Shen Shujia immediately looked into the space and did not see what medicine he was talking about. "Only the study materials and snacks and bread that I put in before." "No. Shen Shujia doesn't have a good airway." As soon as Gu Yan heard her say there was no medicine, he immediately became anxious and said, "How could it not be? You can reach out your hand and I'll take a look." Shen Shujia hesitated for a moment before lifting her hand. Gu Yan reached out and grabbed her hand, their palms facing each other. His hands were big and warm, with slender and distinct fingers. He held his own hand tightly, feeling inexplicably secure in his heart. However, Shen Shujia still feels a bit uncomfortable. She is not used to interacting with others. "All right." As the words fell, Gu Yan extended his other hand and a light green jade bottle lay in the palm of his hand. Shen Shujia lowered her eyes after taking a glance. She couldn't possibly not see such a large bottle in the space. She wants to see what's going on. The hand that Gu Yen was about to release was held back by Shen Shujia, and then she saw that there was actually a small compartment in the space. In the small compartment, there are more than 10 light green jade bottles, as well as several things of different shapes. She wanted to take out those things, but found herself unable to do so. Shen Shujia looked at Gu Yen in confusion, wanting to ask him what was going on, but saw his face turn red. "Are you okay? Isn't losing too much blood a pale complexion?" Gu Yen suddenly felt as if he had been electrocuted and immediately withdrew his hand. "It's okay. Just 2 ears are so red that they almost bleed." Shen Shujia didn't think much, just thought that he was injured and very uncomfortable, so she had to let go of the doubts in her heart. "Give me the medicine, I'll help you apply it." Gu Yen pinched the bottle and glanced at Shen Shujia's head, seeing blood stains on her head as well. "You're also injured, let me give you medicine first." Shen Shujia nodded and said, "Okay." Gu Yen approached her, opened the bottle, and sprinkled medicinal powder on the wound. The medicine powder touched the wound and surprisingly felt a slight chill. I suddenly thought that she didn't know the name of this person yet. So she asked, "What's your name?" "Gu Yen, what about you?" "Shen Shujia." Shen Shujia gave her name and then exclaimed, "It's a damn fate that you share the same name and surname as this person." Gu Yen chuckled and said, "All right, do you have any other places to apply medicine?" "No, thank you. Let me put medicine on you instead." Speaking, Shen Shujia took the bottle and opened the cork, only to find that Gu Yen was a bit tall, at least over 1.8 meters, and she couldn't even reach it. "You squat down a bit, I can't reach it," Shen Shujia said. Upon hearing this, Gu Yen obediently squatted down. Shen Shujia gently brushed aside the hair on the edge of the wound, then held a jade bottle and gently shook it with the mouth of the bottle, successfully sprinkling the medicine powder onto the wound. After touching the wound, the medicine powder quickly melted and disappeared, looking as if it had not been drugged. But the blood from the wound quickly stopped. "What kind of medicine is this? It's so magical!" Shen Shujia exclaimed in surprise. "It was developed by my grandfather, and throughout the entire interstellar space, he is a renowned medical saint." Speaking of Grandpa, Gu Yen was quite proud, and soon the light in his eyes dimmed again. "I don't know when I can go back." Feeling the feeling of disappointment in front of her, Shen Shujia couldn't bear to continue blaming him. She grew up in a family that prioritized sons over daughters before, and she had no feelings for those relatives. For her, survival is the same everywhere, she just wants to live her life well. "It's just that everything I've worked hard before is gone, and for a moment, it's still somewhat difficult to accept in my heart. Since I'm here and can't go back for now, let's live a good life first." As long as Gu Yen doesn't burden himself anymore in the future. End of this chapter. Chapter 3. Showdown. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 3 Showdown. Just tell me these words, don't tell anyone else, otherwise they might think you're crazy. Gu Yen thought of the memories left by this body and also knew how terrifying it was to be mistaken for a madman. So he nodded very obediently. The wound on his head has been treated with medicine, and Shen Shujia was just about to ask if there are any other places where he needs to be treated. Just then, an urgent voice came from not far away. "Jia." It's the voice of Shen's mother in memory. Shen Shujia casually threw the medicine bottle into the space. Then he whispered to Gu Yen, "Don't expose yourself. If someone finds out you're not the same Gu Yen as before, don't drag me down, otherwise I won't spare you." Gu Yen nodded confidently and said, "I promise I won't reveal anything, don't worry." At this moment, Shen Shujia heard the voice of Song Ningyue coming from the mountain. "Right there, Shujia is right down that slope." On this side, Shen's mother glared fiercely at Song Ningyue. She couldn't figure out why her daughter and Song Ningyue went up the mountain to hunt pigweed today, and why they fell into a pit on the slope. Song Ningyue said that Shujia accidentally dropped a wild apple while picking it, so why doesn't she believe it a bit? I told Shujia a long time ago not to play with this Song Ningyue, she just wouldn't listen. Shen's mother ran anxiously to the hillside and saw Shen Shujia standing there, feeling a sigh of relief in her heart. But as soon as she saw blood stains on her body, her heart, which had just been relieved, immediately began to ache again. Shujia, how are you doing? Have you been injured? Shen Shujia looked at the worried woman and felt a warm surge in her heart. I'm fine. Upon hearing that her daughter was fine, Shen's mother finally felt relieved and said, if it's okay, it's okay. Mom, I'll have someone save you. Shen Fu and Shen Shujia's 2 older brothers and 1 younger brother have all arrived, accompanied by more than 10 villagers. As soon as they saw Gu Yan also below, they immediately started discussing. Why is Gu Yan also down there? Shouldn't it just be that I accidentally fell off? The person who said this is the second rascal in the village, a notorious troublemaker in the village. Everywhere I go, I look at others with a pair of squinting eyes, and I don't know how many people have scolded me. Being scolded is just a smile, and one's face can be said to be thicker than a copper wall. Fortunately, in this era, the crime of hooliganism is very serious, and he never dares to do anything rogue. In the crowd, Tan Qiming also heard Hu Dan's words, and his face immediately became very ugly. Especially when I saw Shen Shujia and Gu Yan on the slope, their faces turned even darker. Song Ningyue secretly glanced at Tan Qiming and saw his angry expression, feeling secretly happy in her heart. She didn't believe that Tan Qiming would still like Shen Shujia this time. Shen Mu's eyes were like knives shooting at the jerk, you don't want that mouth anymore, do you? The fool met the fierce gaze of the 5 members of Shen's family, and nervously touched his nose and smiled, afraid to say anything more. Shen's mother saw that he dared not chew his tongue recklessly, so she immediately spoke to Shen's father and 3 sons. Hurry up and throw the hemp rope down, let Shujia come up. While Shen's father and 4 others were busy, Shen's mother's sharp eye once again fell on Song Ningyue's face. What's going on with Gu Yan? Other villagers also looked over in unison. Faced with so many people's scrutiny, Song Ningyue really wanted to say that she didn't know, as it happened to damage Shen Shujia's reputation. But as soon as Gu Yan comes up, she will definitely expose her lies, and Shen Mu will be willing to spare her. After much thought, she decided to be honest, so she said, when I came down the mountain, I happened to run into him and called him to come and save Shujia. However, halfway up the mountain, the vine broke and he accidentally fell down. I quickly went down the mountain to find you. In fact, she didn't mention one thing, which is that she didn't run down the mountain in the first place, but rather dawdled on the road for half a day before getting down. Who knew Shen Shujia was so lucky, bleeding so much, yet still alive? Song Ningyue thought with hatred. After throwing the hemp rope down, Shen Shujia tied it around her waist and grabbed it with both hands. With the help of Shen's father and brother, she successfully came up. Shen Mu immediately pulled Shen Shujia in front of her, and when she saw the wound on her head, her heart was filled with pain. How did you bump into such a big wound? Mom, go find some mugwort leaves to rub and apply it to you. Aiye's application on the wound is painful. Shen Shujia quickly grabbed her and said, Mom, there's no need to look for Aiye. I'm fine, the wound doesn't bleed anymore. You see how easy it is to stop bleeding so much, just stand still and don't move. As she spoke, Shen Mu walked over to the side and flipped over, then picked a dozen or so mugwort leaves and began to knead them. Rub the leaves a few times to extract juice, then pull Shen Shujia over and without saying a word, apply the leaves to the wound on Shen Shujia's head. Hiss. Shen Shujia's body trembled, feeling her scalp tingling with pain. Fortunately, it only hurt a little and then stopped. At this moment, Gu Yan also climbed up from the bottom of the slope. The Gu family members who heard the news also arrived at this moment. When Gu's mother saw the bloodstains on Gu Yan's body, her face turned pale with fear. Gu's mother was already gentle and delicate, and now her pale face made her even more fragile. "I'm fine." Gu Yan was afraid that she would worry too much, so he had to learn to appease her in his original form. The villagers, seeing that both of them were fine, let go of their worries and turned around to go down the mountain to continue working and earn their wages. Tan Qiming gave Shen Shujia a gloomy glance in the crowd, and then followed the big guy down the mountain. In addition, there were also Gu's mother and daughter, as well as Gu Yan, who stayed behind. "You guys go back to work. Lao Si should invite the village doctors to come and show Jia Jia." Shen's mother arranged everyone's work in just a few seconds. Shen Fumo looked at his daughter with concern, and Shen Shujia immediately smiled and said it was okay. Only then did he confidently take the eldest and second leaders down the mountain. Shen's mother carried a basket filled with pigweed on her back, holding her daughter's hand and softly asking her what had happened. Upon hearing this, Song Ningyue, who was not far or close behind, immediately ran up and grabbed Shen Shujia's hand. "Shujia, whether you're seriously injured or not, it's all my fault," she said with a hypocritical smile. "If I had known it was so dangerous there, I wouldn't have agreed to you picking wild apples." Shen Shujia gave her a deep glance and pushed away her hand. There is no one else around now, and Shen Shujia doesn't want to pretend to be with her. "If you hadn't bumped into me, would I have fallen?" Speaking of which, it was Song Ningyue who brought her here to fetch pigweed, otherwise she wouldn't have found any wild apples. If you think about this series of events, they are exactly the same as the time novel Xia Lan told herself. So she also knew long ago that she might have traveled into a book. And I am the canon fodder supporting actress in that book. What happened today is the first step for the reborn Song Ningyue to destroy the original owner Tan Qiming. According to Xia Lan, Gu Yan disappeared on the spot because he fell down a slope and hit the back of his head while rescuing the original owner. End of this chapter. Chapter 4, I'll listen to you, okay. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 4, I'll listen to you, okay. After this incident, the original owner's reputation did indeed deteriorate. The villagers all said that it was her gluttony that killed Gu Yan. However, Tan Qiming and the original owner are still in the early stages of their relationship and have not yet established a romantic relationship. However, this still does not affect Tan Qiming's view of Shen Shujia as his object. Otherwise, I wouldn't have subconsciously turned black when others were discussing Shen Shujia and Gu Yan. Later, Song Ningyue deliberately approached Tan Qiming and occasionally intentionally or unintentionally blackened Shen Shujia. In the end, Tan Qiming became extremely disgusted with Shen Shujia and turned his head to choose to be with Song Ningyue. Shen's mother did not expect such an insider story to exist among them. She immediately grabbed Song Ningyue's wrist and sternly questioned, "So you did harm Jiejia?" Shen's mother has been doing farm work for years, and her strength is not small. She pinched Song Ningyue until her face showed pain. "Auntie, it hurts to hold on to me. Can you let go of me first?" Song Ningyue tried to move Shen's mother's hand, but couldn't do it. She could only turn her gaze to Shen Shujia on the side, tears of grievance swirling in her eyes. It seems to have suffered a great deal of injustice. "Shujia, you must have made a mistake. We are good friends, how could I possibly bump into you?" Song Ningyue has a gentle face and is one of the most beautiful women in Ximing village. Whenever she shed a few tears in front of the villagers, the men immediately began to speak for her. Unfortunately, this time she was facing Shen Shu, who had already changed her heart, and Shen's mother, who was protecting her short. However, Shen Shujia had no intention of doing anything to Song Ningyue. If she said it was Song Ningyue who knocked herself down in today's incident. As long as Song Ningyue bites to the death and refuses to admit it, maybe she will bite back at herself. At that time, Song Ningyue will definitely use this matter to tarnish her reputation in the village. I just want Shen Shujia to endure and continue to interact with Song Ningyue. That's absolutely impossible. Whether you hit me or not, you know it best in your own heart. Mom, let go of her, let's go. Shen Shujia gave her a cold glance and then pulled Shen's mother's hand down the mountain. Shen Mama let go and dropped a harsh sentence before leaving. If you let me know what you have done to Jia, I will never spare you. I didn't. Song Ningyue wanted to explain, but Shen's mother and Shen Shujia ignored her words at all. Gu Yan and Gu's mother also heard their conversation. Gu Yan naturally believed in Shen Shujia. As he passed by Song Ningyue, Gu Yan glanced at her with icy eyes. Other people's affairs are not easy to deal with. Gu's mother gave Song Ningyue a vague glance and hurriedly followed Gu Yan. Song Ningyue watched the few people walk away, her eyes full of pride, and her heart once again regretful that she couldn't successfully kill Shen Shujia this time. However, when she thought about Tan Qiming's expression just now, she felt that today was not without gains. Shen Shujia, Tan Qiming is mine. You can never try to snatch him away from me in this lifetime. On this side, Shen Shujia and her group walked to the foot of the mountain. Shen's mother suddenly stopped and walked up to Gu Yan. Thank you for rescuing Jia today. Gu Yan was about to say no thanks, but it's not really what he wants to save. Just as I was about to open my mouth, I saw Shen Shujia beside me winking at me. He suddenly remembered the words she had warned him, remembered that his character couldn't be defeated, and could only say stubbornly, "You don't need to thank me." The atmosphere became somewhat subtle for a moment. Gu's mother secretly glared at her speechless son and quickly broke the deadlock. His child just talks like this, don't mind, she said, no. They are all children who grew up in the village, and Shen's mother has some understanding of Gu Yan's personality. Then I'll take him back to bandage the wound, Gu Mu said. The Gu family is located at the foot of the mountain. Watching Gu Yan and Gu's mother go home, Shen's mother also pulled Shen Shujia home. On the way home, I kept scolding her. I told you earlier not to have any dealings with that Song Ningyue. That little girl looks like a sieve at first glance, this kind of person will always stab someone in the back. You almost got killed by her today, by the way, why did you stop me just now? As long as you just bitten to death and Song Ningyue knocked you down, I won't call you Kai Lanji if I don't beat her to death. As Shen's mother became increasingly angry, Shen Shujia quickly spoke up and turned off the engine. Mom, we don't have any evidence to prove that she hit me, and she even called for you to come and save me. If we beat her up, she will cry and talk nonsense to everyone. Do you think everyone will believe her or us then? Upon hearing her daughter's words, Shen's mother also felt that Song Ningyue could definitely do such a thing. She just wanted to let Song Ningyue go like this, feeling like she was holding back a bit of anger and unable to release it. So she bumped into you and caused you such a serious injury, so you don't care anymore. So isn't your injury in vain? No, I can't bear to breathe this. I'll go teach her a lesson later. Shen Shujia looked at her mother, who was determined to stand out for her, and her heart gradually filled with warm emotions. She had never experienced the feeling of being protected before, which was so happy. From childhood to adulthood, her grandmother and mother always whispered to her, while her younger brother was still young and had to give way to him. Later, they said that the girl didn't need so many books, forcing her to go out early to work and earn money. Later on, they also said that it was not easy at home, and it was not easy for my younger brother. As an older sister, you need to help your younger brother. Your younger brother relies on her to get married and buy a house. They never ask themselves if they are happy or if they have been bullied while working outside. Shen's mother saw that her daughter was silent for a while, and when she saw that her daughter's eyes were filled with tears, her heart immediately tugged. Jia, don't cry, is the wound painful? Shen's mother raised her hand, turned her sleeves over, and wiped her tears with the clean side. Shen Shujia shook her head and said, "It's not that the wound hurts. After applying the medicine powder to the wound, I no longer feel the pain. It's just that Shen's mother's protective actions are too heartwarming, and I don't know why she inexplicably feels extremely aggrieved in her heart." Tears uncontrollably flowed out. Upon hearing that it was not a painful wound, Shen's mother thought it was because she had just said she wanted to teach Song Ningyue a lesson, which made her cry. Immediately provide a soft and continuous guarantee. Then I won't teach Song Ningyue a lesson. I'll listen to you. Don't cry. A mother who dotes on her daughter so much, as long as she is a child, she can't help but pounce on her mother and act coquettishly. Shen Shujia naturally followed her heart and threw herself into Shen's mother's arms to hold her. Choked up and said, "Mom, thank you." Shen's mother was slightly stunned and immediately smiled, "Hi, you don't need to thank me. It's not appropriate to be a mother protecting her own child." Although Shen's mother spoke like this, she was actually happy in her heart. After all, no one wants their efforts not to receive a response. Especially when she heard her daughter's soft voice expressing gratitude, Shen's mother was overjoyed and felt that she was not favored in vain. End of this chapter. Chapter 5. Piyang wants to be beaten. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 5. Piyang wants to be beaten. Alright, let's go back quickly. Your brother probably brought the doctor home. Let's go back and see the wound on your head quickly. Shen Shujia obediently responded. Shen Shujia had just returned home with her mother when her sister.in-law Li Zhenju heard a sound as she walked out of the room. Li Zhenju was just 2 months pregnant, and Shen's mother asked her to rest well at home and sit the fetus firmly. It's not time to cook yet, she just patched her torn clothes in the room. Mother has returned. As Li Zhenju spoke, she saw the blood-stained wound on Shen Shujia's head, which looked a bit shocking. She was stunned for a few seconds, but quickly realized. Just now, Lao Si invited a doctor from the village to come over and said that San Mei was injured. I didn't expect it to be so serious. Fourth brother has already called the doctor. Hurry in and let the doctor take a look. Shen's mother gave Li Zhenju a satisfied glance, and she was truly right about this daughter.in-law. Although thin and weak, they can't earn much work in a day, but fortunately they are obedient, sensible, and have a good personality. After entering the door, I showed filial piety to my parents-in-law and took good care of several brothers. The most important thing is not to be jealous of her kindness towards her daughter, and she has always had a good expression towards her daughter. The two of them each supported one arm of Shen Shujia, feeling like they were holding a person who couldn't walk, as if protecting a fragile ceramic doll. Shen Shujia was a bit moved and a bit embarrassed in her heart. She seems to have suffered a head injury, her hands and feet are still fine, there's really no need to walk with her. Sister-in-law, you're holding on to your body, so you don't need to support me. Shen Shujia was afraid of tiring Li Zhenju, so she quickly grabbed her hand and held it. Some fetuses are very stingy, and the mother may give birth with just a little effort. This is the first baby of the Shen family, so it is natural to take good care of it until it is safely delivered. Shen's mother suddenly remembered this incident and said, "Listen to Jia, I just need to support her." Speaking, she looked at Shen Shujia with a spoiled expression in her eyes. Look, her daughter is sensible. Okay, mother. Li Zhenju smiled brightly at the corner of her mouth. Sure enough, it's right to listen to my mother. Marrying into the Shen family is really a blessing. There is only one doctor in the village, who was one of the earliest group of elderly educated youth to go to the countryside. His grandfather is an old doctor in a medical clinic. He had been studying medicine with his grandfather at home before going to the countryside. The fourth son of the Shen family had already roughly explained his condition on the way he brought him over. As soon as Shen Shujia entered the room, Dr. Xie took disinfectant, hemostatic powder, and gauze from the small box he carried with him. When iodine was sprayed onto the wound, Shen Shujia still screamed a few times in pain. Subconsciously wanting to hide, she was immediately held down by the shrewd Shen mother. Shen Shujia. Fortunately, the pain quickly dissipated and the gauze wrapped around it. Shen's mother returned to her room and took money to give to Dr. Xie. When Dr. Xie left, Shen Hai quickly slipped over and, taking advantage of Shen Shujia's lack of attention, avoided the injured area and lightly poked her head. With a low voice, "Oh, this time the injury is not light, is it painful?" Shen Shujia. Is this person who deserves to be beaten her brother? Shen's mother happened to see this scene and immediately picked up a broom. "I see you're itching and want to be beaten." Shen Hai quickly rushed out like a monkey at the sight, leaving only his loud voice in the yard. "I'm going to work," he said, "this stinky kid." Shen's mother put away the broom and saw that her daughter was fine, so she started thinking about the work in the field. "It's still early to eat now, so if you can go and work a little more, you can get more work." "Jia, my mother has gone down to the ground. If you have anything, just tell your sister. Law. Do you know? I happened to see Li Jinju go and fetch 2 bowls of water at some point." "Mother, don't worry, I'm at home. I'll just come and watch over Jia," said Shen Shujia, taking 1 bowl for Shen's mother and another for Shen Shujia. "Mom, it's hot weather. Drink some water before leaving." Shen Mu took a few gulps of water and finished drinking it. "Okay, remember to pay attention to her situation and call us out in the field whenever you have time." After Shen's mother finished speaking, she handed the bowl to Li Jinju and hurriedly left. Shen Shujia slowly drank the water as it was entering summer and the weather was hot. She didn't drink water all morning, coupled with losing a lot of blood, and now she's so thirsty that her mouth and tongue are dry. Drinking in a hurry can easily cause choking, so one can only drink slowly. Li Jinju watched her drink slowly and turned around to leave. After Shen Shujia finished drinking the bowl of water in her hand, Li Jinju walked in again from outside. She approached Shen Shujia, spread out her hand, and lay a round egg in her palm. "You've shed a lot of blood today, eat an egg quickly to supplement your nutrition," she said. Shen Shujia's gaze fell on the egg, her eyes suddenly lit up, and her mouth began to secrete saliva crazily. Before peeling off the shell, she seemed to have smelled the fragrance of eggs. She couldn't help but swallow her saliva, swearing that this was really not what she wanted to eat. What delicious food has she never eaten? How could you swallow saliva at an egg? Shen Shujia was a little embarrassed and silently roast about herself. It should be because this body has eaten too little that it shows a desire for food when facing the food it eats. Even if you're greedy, you can't take advantage of the food supply for pregnant women. Shen Shujia shook her head firmly and said, "Sister-in-law, this egg is what my mother asked you to nourish your body every day. I can't eat it." To be honest, her sister-in-law is really good enough. In this era where she couldn't even eat enough, as a pregnant sister-in-law, she was willing to give her nutritional supplements to her sister-in-law. Her character was really outstanding. She has 2 older brothers and 1 younger brother. She is the only girl in the family, and her parents naturally have a preference for some. But it was just a slight preference, so she was not allowed to go down to the ground. There was still work to be done. However, her family never talks about how much work she does or how much work she earns. If it weren't for Song Ningyue's rebirth, the only obstacle in this life would probably have been Tan Qiming cheating on Song Ningyue in 1982. Although both of them were sent in by her in the end, she did give her heart and soul to Tan Qiming. She was just thinking about getting lost when she heard Li Jinju chuckle lightly and say, "It's all eggs laid by the chickens at home, why can't we eat them? You have been injured and have shed a lot of blood. You need to make up for it properly, otherwise, if you fall ill in the future, it will not be good." Speaking, Li Jinju took an egg and broke the eggshell on the table. With her slender fingers, she quickly peeled off the eggshell. The aroma of eggs is even stronger. "Here, I'll feed you. Li Zhenju handed the egg to Shen Shujia's mouth. Shen Shujia was frightened by the enthusiasm of this sister-in-law and quickly reached out to take it. It seems that my sister-in-law is determined to insist that she eat the eggs. If she doesn't eat them, she won't be able to do it, but, sister-in-law, let's eat half of it. If you don't agree, then I won't eat either. Li Zhenju stared at her for 2 seconds before suddenly laughing. Finally, the two of them shared the egg and ate it. After finishing the eggs, Li Zhenju asked Shen Shujia to rest in her room. Coincidentally, Shen Shujia also felt a bit tired, so she followed her instructions and returned to the room. At this time, the house was still made of mud bricks and tiles. Shen Shujia's room is very simple, with a small wardrobe, a table, and a Kong. The weather is hot now, and there is no need to burn the Kong. The mouth of the Kong is blocked with mud bricks. There are grass mats and thin sheets on the Kong, and when you touch them with your hand, it feels a bit cool. The clothes on my body were stained with a lot of blood, and now they are almost dry. She opened the wardrobe, picked up a clean piece of clothing, changed it, and then lay on the Kong, quickly falling asleep. Until a voice came in from outside the house. End of this chapter. Chapter 6. Where did you come from? Your face said I betrayed you. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 6. Where did you come from? Your face said I betrayed you. Shen Shujia rubbed her eyes and came out of the room, seeing that the food was already laid out on the table. Li Zhenju was holding a stack of bowls in her hand, and when she saw her sister-in-law getting up, she smiled and said, "You got up just right. Mom and Dad have just returned, come and sit down." Jia woke up. Shen Mu shook the water on her hand and walked in. How do you feel? Is your head still painful? Shen Shujia shook her head and said, the pain is no longer there. Even if it doesn't hurt, I will continue to rest in the afternoon. This head injury is not a small matter, don't let the root cause fall. Shen Mu said as she divided the dishes on the table into each bowl. Last year's harvest was not good, and this year's wheat has not yet harvested. Every household does not have much food, and everyone is tightening their belts to make a living. In Xinming village, as long as they can work, they will work, and even children aged 6 or 7 can earn some pig grass to exchange work points. At the end of the day, one can also earn 1 to 2 work points. Li Zhenju is currently pregnant and has not started working. Once her fetus is stable, she will need to continue working. Although Shen's father and mother prefer their only daughter, they also do not prefer her to stay idle at home. Shen Fu took a bite of the coarse cake and said, "Your mother is right, just listen to your mother." The family sat around the table. Today's lunch was made of egg and vegetable cake made of coarse flour, cabbage, and a bowl of semi-dry rice porridge. The rice porridge is thick, fragrant and soft, and the egg and vegetable cake is also fragrant. In addition, the crispy and sweet cabbage makes everyone enjoy it. This kind of food is already considered very good in the village. As long as the Shen family doesn't have any children to support yet, a family of 7 earns wages and can receive a considerable amount of food. Other families are not willing to eat eggs like this. Eggs and vegetables are kept and brought to the county to exchange for some things that the family needs. In terms of food, we usually steam some mantou with coarse flour, and eat it with pickles. Occasionally, I am willing to stir-fry some vegetables to improve the food. Good. Shen Shujia drank rice porridge silently. Shen's mother continued, "Madam, in the future, cook 2 eggs in the morning, and you and Jia will each have 1. Upon hearing this, the 4th person, Shen Hai, immediately approached with a playful smile and said, "Mom, I also want to eat eggs." Shen's mother glared at him and said, "You're not injured or pregnant. What kind of eggs do you eat? Besides, there are eggs in this cake, and even if there's something to eat, it won't stop your mouth." It's not that she doesn't want her family to eat better, there are only 5 hens at home, and currently 3 are laying eggs. Only by accumulating the eggs we usually lay can we give everyone a good meal. Now that Li Jinju is pregnant, the eggs naturally need to be given priority in nourishing her, and the rest will be added to the cake. I'll just say it casually. Shen Hai quickly chuckled and took a big bite of the cake. No one will speak again next. Eating without chatting was a rule set by Shen's mother, so the meal quickly ended quietly. After working all morning, everyone is tired. Now that they are full, they go back to the house to rest for a while. Shen Haisu arrived at the door at some point, leaning half of his body against the door frame. I heard that Song Ningyue knocked you down. Who did you hear that? Shen Shujia looked up at him. Don't worry who I heard from, I'll ask you if it was her who hit you. Shen Haisu had a displeased expression on his face, and his tone was also somewhat unpleasant. She hit me, but if she doesn't admit it, I can only admit that I'm unlucky. Why are you asking this? It said so, but it's impossible to make her swallow the matter. When she finds the opportunity, she will definitely make Song Ningyue suffer hard as well. Shen Shujia was afraid that he would cause trouble for Song Ningyue, so she cautioned, I'll tell you. Don't rush to find someone else's trouble, you'll get caught in the braids. Before he could finish speaking, he was disdainfully interrupted by Shen Haisu. Cut, if anyone wants to trouble her, I'll just come and ask. Speaking, Shen Hai quickly turned his head and left. What a proud little brother. Shen Shujia smiled, and as soon as she lay down, she heard the sound of knocking on the wall. Shen Shujia. The voice that shouted like a thief was not just Tan Qiming's voice. Shen Shujia didn't want to pay attention to him, he didn't wait for a response and naturally left. To her surprise, he kept knocking and shouting endlessly, making her feel irritable. Shen Shujia decided not to sleep anymore and decided to go see what Tan Qiming was doing for her. Leaving the yard and walking behind Tan Qiming, I saw his face pressed against the wall, his upper body lying on the wall, looking like a thief with a cunning head. Shen Shujia, I know you're inside. If you don't come out again, I'll leave. Don't come looking for me in the future, Shen Shujia. Did you hear me? Shen Shujia looked at him expressionlessly and said, What are you asking me for? A sudden sound echoed from behind, and Tan Qiming was startled. Turning to see Shen Shujia, he immediately walked over. But the words that Song Ningyue told him echoed in her heart. Gu Yan must have liked Shen Shujia, otherwise she wouldn't have almost lost her life just to save her. Shen Shujia may have fallen in love with Gu Yan as soon as she was moved. When the two of them fall in love, what else will happen to you? He didn't believe what Song Ningyue said at all, so he came specifically to ask Shen Shujia for clarification. As a result, I saw Shen Shujia with a cold and heartless expression on her face. Every time I saw her before, she would run over and smile at me with a joyful expression on her face. Tan Qiming suddenly believed what Song Ningyue said, and the more he thought about it, the greater his anger grew. He didn't even look at the injury on Shen Shujia's head and directly questioned, Shen Shujia, let me ask you, what is your relationship with that Gu Yan? I thought he came to me to say something, but I didn't expect him to show any concern. As soon as he spoke, he suspected that she had something to do with Gu Yan. She really feels unworthy of the feelings that the original owner had for this scumbag. Such a person is really on the right side with Song Ningyue. It's best for both of them to lock up and not harm others. Shen Shujia looked at him with a sarcastic expression and said, Are you here to talk to me about this? Upon seeing her attitude, Tan Qiming's anger grew even greater. Seems like Shen Shujia betrayed him. You really have a relationship. It seems that Song Ningyue is right. Shen Shujia, you have disappointed me too much. How can you treat me well? Shen Shujia was almost laughing at his words. Not to mention that Tan Qiming casually believed in other people's instigation and came to question himself. Besides, Tan Qiming and the original owner have no relationship yet, so why betray them? However, it seems that Xia Lan once said that after being instigated by Song Ningyue's rebirth, the budding relationship between Tan Qiming and the original owner was completely extinguished. Speaking of which, Tan Qiming is not a man worth entrusting for life. In the era when Song Ningyue was not reborn, Tan Qiming, with the support of the original owner's family, became wealthy and cheated on Song Ningyue. Later, Song Ningyue was reborn and took him away. Under the influence and instigation of Song Ningyue, Tan Qiming also did many things that harmed the original owner. Such a person is a scumbag. Isn't he doubting himself? I happen to take this opportunity to distance myself from him. Shen Shujia said coldly, Tan Qiming, since you would rather believe others than me, then you can think whatever you want. And I remember we never had a partner, right? Where did you have the face to say I betrayed you? End of this chapter. Do you have someone you like in chapter 7? You are listening at novelfull.audio. Do you have someone you like in chapter 7? Full of mockery, Tan Qiming's chest kept heaving and his face turned pale with anger. He took a deep breath and gritted his teeth as he looked at Shen Shujia, his airway very hard. Okay. From now on, don't come to me again. Shen Shujia sneered, don't worry, even if I was blind before, I will never go find you in the future. Speaking, Shen Shujia took 2 steps back in disgust. Tan Qiming choked and his face turned red with anger. Seeing Shen Shujia's eagerness to distance herself from her, it made her heart ache with anger. Tan Qiming stared at Shen Shujia with fiery eyes, but in the end, he didn't say anything and walked away with an unpleasant expression on his face. After dismissing Tan Qiming, Shen Shujia felt very happy and hummed a tune as she returned home. Coincidentally, the people in the Shen family got up, and Shen's father and mother were wearing straw hats preparing to go to work. As soon as Shen Mu saw Shen Shujia wandering outside and not resting well at home, she gave her a bad glare. Where did you go if you didn't stay at home properly? I'm just strolling around the yard. I don't feel much anymore. Can I go to work with you guys? She just came over and lived and didn't work for nothing, she always felt a bit embarrassed. After all, food in this era is very scarce. And she used Gu Yan's medicine, and she no longer felt any pain in the wound. It's still possible to earn 1 or 2 work points by getting some pig grass. Shen Haisu looked at Shen Shujia with a skeptical expression on his face and said, when did you become so diligent? Upon hearing his words, Shen Shujia was very dissatisfied and reached out to punch him. When did I lose my diligence? You make me sound like I'm lazy, big or small. Shen Hai quickly dodged the attack from his sister and looked provocative. The wounded should have the consciousness of the wounded. Don't cry and ask us to carry you back when the situation gets worse. It's just a show of weakness. Shen Shujia was so angry that she wanted to hit him, but unfortunately, she didn't hit him even after a few hits. She had to act coquettishly and ask Shen's mother for help. Mom, you see he doesn't take my sister seriously at all. Shen's mother held her daughter and comforted her, secretly giving Shen's father a wink. Shen Fu immediately said in a serious tone, this stinky kid, Dad will go and help you teach him a lesson. Upon hearing Shen's father's words, Shen Haisu quickly ran away. Boss Shen Haishan couldn't help but laugh. Don't be angry, second brother, I'll go beat him up and vent your anger, said Shen Hai, the second brother, with high righteousness speaking. He chased after Lao Si. Shen's mother whispered to Shen Shujia, daughter, I know you are filial. Listen to me, we don't lack these 1 or 2 work points. You should rest well at home today. Shen Mu touched her daughter's soft hair and thought of the small ball she held in her arms when she was just born. In the blink of an eye, her daughter had grown so big. Moreover, she is so filial. Who else's daughter in these 10 miles and 8 villages is as considerate as her daughter? When I thought about it, I thought about my daughter's lifelong affairs. And you're already 19 now. Once you recover from your injuries, we'll have to find a partner for you. I didn't expect everyone to wear books, and I couldn't avoid being urged to get married. She quickly acted coquettishly with Shen's mother and said, Mom, I don't want to get married yet. I just want to spend more time with you and Dad. Shen's mother was pleasantly comforted by Shen Shujia's sweet words, but she did not lose her head and continue to indulge her daughter. Marriage is a lifelong event for women, and those of the same age as their daughters are either married or engaged. If the girl continues to drag on, then all the good ones will be picked away. To be honest with your mother, do you have someone you like? In the past 2 years, she and Shen Shiping have also been attractive to her, but she always uses the excuse that she is still young. Moreover, the couple was not willing to marry off their daughter so early, so it was up to her temperament. But if you keep dragging on now, you'll really become an old lady. Shen's mother stared closely into Shen Shujia's eyes, as if she wanted to see something from her. Shen Shujia's heart skipped a beat, afraid that Shen's mother might notice something. Fortunately, the original owner and Tan Qiming only had private contact, and no one knew about it. In modern times, when she was 24 years old, it was just the beginning of her youth. Now that she is only 19 years old and about to get married, she still feels a bit conflicted. Just how can we get past this matter right now? After a moment of thought, she said, "Not really, but my mom is right. If you have something you like, you can just take a look at each other. As long as you don't like it, it's up to her the final say." Shen Shujia's little abacus was playing with a crackling sound in her heart. Upon hearing her say this, Shen's mother also felt relieved. "Okay, go back. Mom's going to work." Shen's mother waved her hand and hurriedly walked out, muttering, "Oh, I'm going to be late." Li Zhenju saw that her mother-in-law had left and her sister-in-law had not yet returned to her room, so she wanted to call her back and say, "Jia, it's sunny outside. Come back and rest quickly." The call of sister-in-law came from the room. Shen Shujia returned to the main room and saw Li Zhenju cutting patches with scissors, waiting to sew them onto the good clothes. She had nothing to do and wanted to help. "Sister-in-law, I'll cut it." Li Zhenju hesitated for a moment and said, "Do you want to go back to the house and rest?" "No need, I won't be able to sleep at night if I rest any longer," Shen Shujia said. Li Zhenju didn't hesitate to listen and handed her the scissors and torn clothes. 2 people cutting patches and 1 sewing patches, occasionally chatting. Li Zhenju has only been married for 5 months and hasn't adapted so quickly in the Shen family. In order to integrate into the family as soon as possible, she treats everyone sincerely. Shen Shujia looked at Li Zhenju, who was quietly sewing clothes. The needle and thread flowed in her hand, and in no time, she finished sewing a piece of clothing. I don't know if it's due to the light, but she seems to be surrounded by a vague and gentle halo. Thinking about Xia Lan's claim that the Shen family was ultimately destroyed by Song Ningyue and Tan Qiming, but there is not much description of the plot of Li Zhenju, so it is unclear what the ending of this sister-in-law will be. Shen Shujia pursed her lips tightly. No matter what the ending of the Shen family was in the book, she wanted to change the original fate trajectory of this family. With Shen Shujia's help in cutting patches, Li Zhenju quickly sewed all the clothes on hand. Watching the sun outside getting hotter and hotter, Shen Shujia was a bit worried about the working family and didn't know if they had water to drink. "Sister-in-law, let's boil some mung bean water to give to our parents and them to drink," Shen Shujia suggested. "Just send some water, right?" Li Zhenju hesitated a bit. If she was thirsty, she could just drink water and add mung beans to cook. Would that be too wasteful? Shen's mother is the master of the Shen family. She the final say how much food to cook every day. This matter of boiling mung bean water is not subject to Shen's consent, and Li Zhenju cannot make her own decisions. Shen Shujia saw her worries and comforted her, saying, "Don't worry, if my mother blames us, she'll say it's me cooking. The weather is really hot, drinking some mung bean water can make you feel much more comfortable." Without waiting for Li Zhenju's agreement, Shen Shujia went to beat half a bowl of mung beans, washed them clean, and put them in a pot to start cooking. The time for mung beans to cook was a bit long, so Shen Shujia got bored and went back to her house to read a high school book. Li Zhenju only attended elementary school and knew that her sister.in-law had attended high school, which made her envious. At this moment, seeing Shen Shujia reading a book, I couldn't help but look at her frequently. Shen Shujia sensed something and looked up to meet a pair of envious eyes. End of this chapter. Chapter 8. Do you have food? You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 8. Do you have food? Sister-in-law, do you also want to see it? Being caught, Li Zhenju's face instantly turned red. She dodged her gaze and blushed, saying, "No, I'm just curious to take a look." Shen Shujia smiled and saw that she was a bit embarrassed. She said, "It's okay, I'll show you a book. If you don't know anyone, you can come and ask me." "No need, no need." Li Zhenju quickly waved her hand to indicate that she didn't need to take it. However, Shen Shujia had already returned to her room and quickly brought a Chinese language book for the first year of junior high school. Although she had just said she didn't need to take it, when Shen Shujia put the book in her hand, she couldn't wait to take it. Li Zhenju flipped over and looked at it like a treasure, pointing to one of the unfamiliar characters. "Jia, how do you pronounce this character?" Shen Shujia glanced at it and immediately taught her to read it twice. After reading for a while, Shen Shujia taught Li Zhenju 8 new words. Time quietly passed, and the mung bean soup was also cooked. Shen Shujia put down her book and prepared to send mung bean soup to her family in the field. Li Zhenju now treats her sister.in-law like a teacher in her heart, and she is not willing to let her work. Rushing to deliver mung bean soup to the family in the field. This pot of mung bean soup is not light, and Shen Shujia naturally dare not let her go. "Sister-in-law, you don't need to say anything more. I'll go deliver the mung bean soup." Shen Shujia put mung bean soup into the kettle and turned around to see Li Zhenju wiping away her tears. Shen Shujia was frightened. She didn't remember saying anything unpleasant. She quickly grabbed her sister.in-law's hand and said, "Sister.in-law, why are you crying?" Li Zhenju choked for a moment and slowly said, "You've been so kind to me. I've never had such a good time at home." Before marrying into the Shen family, she was a big sister with a younger brother and sister underneath. Her family always tells her to give way to her younger siblings. Grandma says that when a girl is raised, she goes to someone else's house. If she can do more work at home, she can earn more work. This procrastination dragged Li Zhenju until she was 19 years old, and she soon became an old girl before finding a matchmaker to show her. After seeing her in the Shen family, it took her 2 more years to marry into the Shen family, and in the end, she asked for a high dowry of 30 yuan. Although Li's mother sympathizes with her daughter, it is Mrs. Li who is in charge of the Li family. If she dares to have any objections, she may even invite a beating. But she still secretly inquired about the situation of the Shen family and the character of Shen Haishan, the eldest son of the Shen family, and knew that the Shen family had good character. Privately teaching Li Zhenju to marry into the Shen family and live a good life, show filial piety to her parents, and take care of her younger siblings. After marrying into the Shen family, she has always followed her mother's instructions and has been cautious, fearing that she may not do anything well. I just didn't expect the people from the Shen family to be very kind to her, especially after she became pregnant, they wouldn't let her do heavy work. Now that my sister.in-law is so kind to her, how can she not be moved to tears? Shen Shujia breathed a sigh of relief and advised her, "We are a family, and it is normal for us to treat you well. A family should be friendly and united, and only with harmony can everything prosper." "Well, you're really good." Li Zhenju burst into tears and smiled. Seeing that her sister.in-law's emotions had stabilized, Shen Shujia went out to deliver mung bean soup to her father and mother. The Shen family is in the middle of the village, and the village is located on the outskirts, connecting from the village entrance to the village end. Today everyone is working in the fields at the end of the village. She walked straight to the end of the village carrying mung bean soup, and on the way, she saw Aunt Nyo's 6-year-old son, Showdown, playing flipping stones with a few children from the village. Upon seeing Shen Shujia, Showdown immediately lifted his head and smiled with a pure and flawless expression. Shujia sister. Showdown takes the village children with him every day, either climbing trees to catch bird eggs or going to the ditch to catch small fish. He has tanned his skin and looks very healthy at first glance. When I was smiling, I still showed a row of small white teeth. Recently, I started changing my teeth, and I still have 2 missing teeth on my front teeth. Shen Shujia has never had much resistance to sweet-mouthed children. Especially Showdown smiled so brightly at her. She couldn't help but reach out and pinch Showdown's face, then take out a cookie from her pocket. It was actually a snack she placed in the space and a loose biscuit she bought in the supermarket. Here's a cookie for you to share with the others. As soon as Showdown saw the biscuit, his eyes lit up and he excitedly said, "Thank you, Shujia." He took the biscuit and sniffed it under his nose, looking intoxicated and saying, "It smells so good." A few other children gathered around, shouting for a sniff. "You guys play, I'll go send my parents mung bean soup." A few little guys were filled with cookies in the hands of Showdown at this moment, and where could they hear Shen Shujia's words? They all chattered around Showdown, saying good things. Shen Shujia smiled and ignored them, walking straight towards the end of the village. After walking for a while, I was about to approach the end of the village when suddenly Gu Yan walked towards me. His head was still wrapped in gauze of the same style as himself. Gu Yan looked at Shen Shujia, and the worried cloud on her face instantly dissipated, with a bright light in her eyes. He walked up to Shen Shujia with long legs, his eyes flickering with anticipation. "Are you here to find me? That looks like a lost little cute dog that just arrived at its owner. If there was a tail behind him, it would probably wag." Shen Shujia shook her head and said, "No, I'm going to bring mung bean soup to my parents." Upon hearing her say that she was not looking for him, Gu Yan was slightly disappointed. But upon hearing the mung bean soup, my eyes lit up again. "What is mung bean soup?" "It's just for drinking," Shen Shujia said perfunctorily and continued walking. Drinking. Thinking of the food he had just eaten at Gu's house, Gu Yan's eyebrows furrowed almost to the point of nodding. Her gaze drifted over the kettle in her hand, feeling her stomach writhing with hunger. Gu Yan spoke a bit embarrassed and said, "Shen Shujia, do you have anything else to eat?" Shen Shujia stopped and looked at him puzzled. "Didn't you have lunch? It's already past lunchtime now." Normally, people have already had lunch, haven't they? His family can't have had lunch yet. But the person in front of her looked pitifully. "I'm very hungry," and besides not eating, she couldn't think of any other reason. Speaking of lunch, Gu Yan's face suddenly showed an indescribable expression. "I've eaten it before. Why do you look like you're starving to death?" Shen Shujia looked at him with suspicion. Gu Yan's face turned a little red as he was stared at. "Their food is too bad for me to eat," he said, looking back on the scene of having lunch at the Gu family. He was extremely hungry. As he remembered, after Gu's parents moved their chopsticks, he couldn't wait to take a bite of a steamed bun. Unexpectedly, that clump of hair was like a long thorn, piercing the mouth without saying anything, and even piercing the throat when swallowing. He only took one bite and couldn't eat it anymore. If it weren't for the fact that Shen Shujia had said before that she wanted to maintain the original temperament of her body, otherwise she would have been mistaken for a monster. Otherwise, he would have vomited it on the spot. "But if I don't eat, my stomach is so hungry. The humans in this time and space are really troublesome. In order to maintain life, they have to eat such unpleasant food. It's better to be in interstellar space, just absorb energy, and at worst, there is still nutrient solution to drink." Fortunately, the Gu family did not notice anything, thinking that he had suffered an injury and had a bad appetite. Gu's mother took a bowl and left him a portion of steamed buns and pickled vegetables, saying that he would eat them when he was hungry. "Tell him to go back to his room and rest well, he doesn't have to go down to the ground for the next 2 days. End of this chapter. Chapter 9. I listen to you. You are listening at Novel Full. Audio. Chapter 9. I listened to you when the Gu family started working. Gu Yan was so hungry that he couldn't bear it anymore. He thought of Shen Shujia, who had traveled to this time and space with him. I couldn't help but want to see how she was doing. So there is now this scene. At this moment, Gu Yan opened a pair of harmless eyes and eagerly looked at Shen Shujia. Somehow, the three words, little milk dog, suddenly came to mind in Shen Shujia's mind. That pair of clear and sincere eyes, no wonder so many sisters like this one. Being stared at by such a pair of eyes, coupled with his decent face. Even she couldn't help feeling a little soft-hearted inside, and even wanted to slap his head. Realizing what she was thinking, Shen Shujia felt a bit embarrassed and quickly abandoned some unnecessary thoughts. She took out a piece of bread from the space and said, "This is bread. You can cushion your stomach first." Gu Yan's gaze fell on the bread and he didn't reach out to take it. Shen Shujia finally remembered that this person didn't seem to be from Earth, and it seemed like he had never eaten bread. She opened the bread bag and an aroma of bread emanated. Gu Yan's eyes lit up in an instant, and he quickly took the bread and took a bite. He was really too hungry, especially when he smelled the smell of this thing. His stomach was noticeably even more hungry. It wasn't until the fragrant and soft food reached his mouth that he realized that not all the food in this time and space was as bad as Gu's. Gu Yan finished the bread in 2 or 3 bites, but he was still a bit unsatisfied. He continued to look at Shen Shujia with bright eyes and said, "Is there anything else?" Shen Shujia took another bread for him and looked at the surprise and amazement that occasionally appeared in those eyes. She couldn't help but be curious about him as a person. She asked, "By the way, where are you from? What do you usually eat over there?" Gu Yan has an inexplicable trust in the person who came to this unfamiliar time and space with him. "I think she will definitely not harm me." Without much thought, he said directly, "I come from interstellar space, and we don't need to eat food to maintain life there. We just absorb energy directly, and when we don't want to absorb energy, we can also drink nutrient solution." After speaking, the second bread is also finished. Gu Yan licked his thin lips and said, "The bread you gave is very delicious. If only all the food was so delicious." Thinking of the food left for him by the Gu family, Gu Yan's eyebrows furrowed. "What you're eating is called bread. There are delicious foods in this world, and naturally there are also unpleasant ones, as well as even more delicious ones than bread." Shen Shujia chuckled inwardly as she looked at his worried expression. She didn't know what kind of interstellar world he lived in, and there was still someone so innocent and ignorant. Really? Gu Yan felt a bit hopeful when she said that. He couldn't help but ask, "How can I get to eat those delicious foods?" Shen Shujia didn't answer his question, but quietly looked at him for a few seconds, wanting to confirm one more thing. "Are you really unable to let us go back now?" Upon hearing this, Gu Yan knew why she asked such a question, and then the whole person became depressed. Why doesn't he want to go back? After returning to the Gu family, he persisted in sensing energy, but could not sense it at all. Gu Yan's expression was full of melancholy. "I've tried, it's useless." Upon hearing him say so, Shen Shujia was a bit disappointed, but it was also expected. "Since you can't go back, why not live your current life well?" Because she is not sure if she can return to modern times in this lifetime. In this case, we can't just take one step at a time. The top priority is to let Gu Yan manage his mouth well. As long as his reputation is not compromised, no one will notice any abnormalities between Gu Yan and her. Thinking of this, she wanted to know what Gu Yan's current thoughts were. She asked, "What are your plans now?" "What are your plans?" Gu Yan's eyes were a bit confused. He knew nothing about this unfamiliar time and space, and in fact, no one knew how panicked he was deep inside today. If there is a choice, he naturally wants to return to interstellar space. Unfortunately, there is no choice now. He cannot sense the energy and wants to return to the interstellar space without energy, which is undoubtedly a fantasy. But the woman in front of him is different, she seems to know this time and space very well. Is it possible that as long as you follow her, you don't have to eat those unpleasant foods yourself? Gu Yen felt as if he had found a way and felt secretly happy. You know, I know nothing about this time and space, I have no plans. As he spoke, Gu Yen suddenly raised a bright smile at Shen Shujia and began to approach her. Shen Shujia, I don't want that energy proton anymore. I'll listen to you from now on. As long as you can give me the delicious bread I just had, can you? After speaking, Gu Yen looked at her with that hopeful look. Shen Shujia glared at him and was more or less moved by what he said. Although his energy proton doesn't have much space, it's really a good thing. If you can exchange it with a little food, it's not too cost-effective. Okay, deal. Shen Shujia said firmly, afraid that he would back out later. Shen Shujia immediately took out 2 bags of raisin bread and stuffed 3 bags of red bean bread into his arms. Each bag is pre-cut, with 7 pieces in each bag, enough for him to eat for a long time. She used to be too lazy to make breakfast, and when she was busy with work, she couldn't even afford to eat. So she bought some extra from the cake shop and put them in the space for emergencies. I didn't expect it to come in great use now. Gu Yen held a pile of bread and was also very happy. Now he finally didn't have to eat those unpleasant foods. Perhaps in a few days, he will be able to sense the energy and absorb enough energy to leave this haunted place. Seeing his happy expression on her face, Shen Shujia couldn't help but remind him, you must hide these things from being discovered, otherwise no one will be able to save you. This is not that she wants to scare him. These things are only available in the county's supply and marketing cooperatives, and tickets are needed to buy them. However, at this time, the texture of bread is far inferior to the modern soft and delicate texture. However, for ordinary families, buying bread to eat is simply too luxurious. So if others see him having so much bread, they may wonder how to speculate about Gu's family. In addition, Gu's mother's family has elements, even though she is a married woman, she still can't shake off the hat that has elements on her head. The human heart is the most difficult to fathom, and no one knows if the people around you will envy you and secretly create obstacles behind your back. In order not to be discovered as Gu Yen, Shen Shujia patiently and carefully explained this history in some precautions to him. After listening, Gu Yan's desire to leave this time and space became even more urgent. This era is too terrifying, he wants to return to interstellar space. End of this chapter. Chapter 10. Originally, you knew you were a loser. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 10. Originally, you knew you were a loser. Alright, I've told you everything I need to say. From now on, it's up to you. Keep going. After saying so much, her mung bean soup has cooled down. Shen Shujia walked away carrying mung bean soup. Looking at her back, Gu Yan's heart would echo with what she had just said, and his heart would become increasingly anxious and uneasy. This time and space is too dangerous. It's safer to follow her before successfully returning to the interstellar space. He chased after the bread and said, Jia, can you help me keep these breads? No help. Can you please? Finally, Shen Shujia collected the bread. There's no way. He is just too annoying. At the end of the village, she asked Gu Yen to go back. Otherwise, if someone saw her walking with Gu Yen, the gossip in the whole village in the next few days would definitely be about her and Gu Yen. After Gu Yen left, she walked out of the village towards the ground. As soon as Shen Shujia appeared in the ground, countless eyes immediately fell on her. She ignored the scrutinizing gaze of those people and went straight to the side of Shen's father and mother. The sun in June has scorched people's skin, and all the people working in the fields are soaked in sweat. Shen's mother wiped her sweat with a cloth strip hanging around her neck and happened to see Shen Shujia coming. She frowned and said, Why did you come here if you didn't rest well at home? The weather is too hot, I'll bring you mung bean soup to relieve the heat. Shen Shujia smiled and took out 2 bowls, pouring a bowl of mung bean soup for her father and mother. Shen Fu took it over with a smile on his face and said, if you've brought the mung bean soup, hurry back and don't stay here and get sunburned. Shen's mother nodded in agreement and said, your father is right. The weather is hot and you sent your brother's mung bean soup, so hurry back. Okay. Shen Shujia obediently responded and waited for Shen's father and mother to drink before going to the eldest and second brothers. Big brother, second brother, and younger brother are not next to Shen's father and mother, and there is also Aunt Nyo in between. Aunt Nyo saw Shen Shujia passing by and greeted with a smile. On such a hot day, Jia Jia still came to bring water to her family. Before Shen Shujia could speak, Shen's mother proudly raised her voice and said, Jia Jia has brought us mung bean soup. Upon hearing this, Aunt Nyo suddenly became envious and said, it seems better to have a daughter. At this moment, I don't even know where to play with the mud at my house, Nyodun. That's it. Isn't it just that the girl is considerate? Speaking of Shen Shujia, the pride on Shen's mother's face is not fake. After all, the girls in the entire village are the ones she gave birth to, and they look the best. A middle-aged woman who was not far away listened to Shen's mother's praise of her own daughter and looked dissatisfied. No matter how good the daughter is, what's the use? If you raise her, you still have to marry into someone else's house. This sarcastic lady is Shen Shujia's aunt. Shen's father's name is Shen Jingwei, and he is the second in the family. His elder brother is named Shen Jingyang, and he has 2 younger brothers, Shen Jingming and Shen Jingqing, and a younger sister, Shen Hexiang. Initially, Shen Jingwei met Shen's mother Kai Lanji by chance and insisted on marrying her despite his parents' opposition. Especially when the big house heard that the Kai Lanji family had connections, they urged the boss Shen Jingyang to separate their families if Shen's father married Kai Lanji. Unexpectedly, Shen's father was also very stubborn, so he recognized Kai Lanji and took the initiative to separate from the Shen family. He found a piece of wasteland in the village and built a thatched cottage. After a year, Shen's father married Shen's mother back home through his own efforts. After getting married, although life was very difficult, through the efforts of the two, life also improved. Later, they gave birth to several children one after another, and finally repaired the house they currently live in. On the contrary, the life of the Shen family is getting worse and worse, and it is often heard that several sister-in-law are causing a lot of trouble. Until the death of the 2 elderly members of the Shen family, several brothers of the Shen family also split up. Aunt Shen has always looked down on her sister-in-law, and when chatting with others, she would stir up trouble openly and secretly. Fortunately, Shen's mother is not a soft persimmon, she is easily manipulated and bullied. Especially her daughter is even worse. Shen's mother sneered and immediately retorted, some people don't have daughters, so we can only say some sharp and harsh words to balance our psychology. Whether this person's character is good or not depends on the heaven's eyes. No wonder some people don't have daughters in their lives. Upon hearing this, Aunt Shen felt as if she had been stabbed in pain. She gave birth to 5 sons in a row, but later starved to death due to the famine. The remaining 3 have one who is suffering from illness and has been drinking soup and medicine for years, hanging his life. However, thinking of what her mother said, her daughter is a loser, she couldn't help but disdain and say, my daughter is a loser. If I raise her, I will lose my food in vain. Shen's mother gave her a sidelong glance and said, what about the loser? The loser said you. Aunt Shen instinctively took up the conversation. Ha ha ha. So you know you're a loser. Shen's mother had a mocking smile on her face. The people around couldn't help but secretly laugh as they listened to their conversation. Aunt Shen suddenly realized and her dark face turned red with anger. She wanted to say something more to fight back, and Shen Jingyang beside her felt his face turn pale. He suppressed his anger and rebuked, work hard, don't you think it's not embarrassing enough? Aunt Shen gave him a disdainful glare and began to complain, "I've been bullied as a sister.in.law, and you're not helping me yet. It's really useless." Shen Jingyang threw the hoe and looked at her fiercely. "Say it again." Aunt Shen immediately hesitated at his fierce demeanor and dared not speak any more. She lowered her head and silently worked. Just the action of working seemed to be her enemy. Seeing Shen's mother's combat prowess, Shen Shujia silently gave her a thumbs up in her heart. Winning the argument made Shen's mother feel very relaxed. She smiled and said to Aunt Nyo, "Let me tell you, my daughter knows how to love people and how hard we work," so she cooked mung bean soup and brought it over. "It's just that it's not pleasing to others. Some people just can't see how good others are." Aunt Nyo nodded in agreement and said, "Jia, this child is really good. Everyone in the village knows that the Shen family dotes on Jia, this daughter. The key is that she hasn't been spoiled either. She looks amazing, is polite to people, and is also diligent. She helps her family earn work by cutting pigsty every day." Listening to the two of them praising her face to face, Shen Shujia felt a bit embarrassed. Feeling a little hot on her face, she quickly said to Aunt Nyo, "Aunt Nyo, I won't bother you with your work anymore. I'll go and bring my brother's mung bean soup." As she spoke, she went straight towards the three brothers of the Shen family. The three brothers of the Shen family are all weeding the peanut fields in the village collective. It's early June now, and it's a busy month for farmers every year. This month happens to be the time for the wheat harvest. So recently, everyone has been relatively idle and has not earned much work. When it comes to officially harvesting wheat, everyone in the village, big and small, will come to help. It will be time to earn wages, and some people can earn 10 wages a day. The three brothers of the Shen family stopped their work when they saw Jia coming. "Big brother, second brother, and small speed, I brought you mung bean soup. Have you finished drinking all the water in your water bag?" When she came, she only brought Shen's father and mother's bowls, so she had to let them drink with a water bottle. Second brother got closer to her and directly brought the water bag over. "I've finished drinking it all. The weather is too hot, and there's not enough water to drink. Fortunately, Jia brought us mung bean soup." End of this chapter.